Welcome to Photoshop, and today we're going to take a look at this image. I'm going to give you my thoughts and how I go about deciding what I want to do when toning an image. So I've downloaded this image and I'm going to have the link available in the description below so you can download this image and work along, or go ahead and try on your own and see what you can come up with. So just in general, it's not a bad image. It's not a great image. There's a few things that I see. We have lines going this way and lines going this way. Usually you want your flow to be a little bit more fluid. It's kind of a little odd to have lines here and lines here, but is it horrible? No, it has some nice movement in the image as well. My actual biggest problem with this image is this arm right here. This arm kind of contradicts this flow and this flow in the image, and you cut it off right on the wrist. You never want to cut arms off at appendages. Learning how to place arms or put arms in an image is important. If we just had this arm bent or behind her or somewhere else or down this, anything would have been better than just having it hang straight down and cut off. This arm also looks a little bit long or elongated and odd, like she's looking this way, but the arm is going this way. It's contradicting the movement of the photo. So we have her looking this way. We have this going this way, but then we have this arm in this direction, which is a little bit odd. What do I want to do to this photo? So there's a couple of things that I can see right off bat. Your eye is always going to go to the whitest part of the image, and that's these little white thingamajiggers back here. Not sure what they are, don't care. What I'm going to do is actually darken those a little bit more than they probably are naturally in real life. Why? Because I don't want my eye to go here. I want my eye to go here. So I'm going to just knock this area down a little bit here, and I'm definitely going to open this area up. Now, this was a really good exposure. A lot of times a photographer will expose for their subject and blow out the background. It's not that you can't do that, but I just think in general, this had a good blend of exposure where we kind of held the highlight detail back here, and then we can open this up. I always tell students to shoot on the dark side, meaning if you're unsure, shoot a little bit dark because it's easier to open something up. But once you've blown out a highlight, you can't get it back. It doesn't matter if it's in RAW or not. If there's no detail, you can't bring nothing back. The first thing we're going to do is go ahead and change this from Adobe Color to Adobe Standard. This is going to open the image up a little bit. It's also going to knock the color down. But the reason I'm going to do that, when you open up a face, it is going to get more saturated in color. So if I brighten her up, she's going to probably get more red. And I don't want that. And if I have on Adobe Color, that red is going to be more intense and more difficult to deal with. And just in general, I either use portrait or standard for any portrait image that I have. We can come in here and switch and try a different color balance. So there's no reason we can't go with this sort of cool color balance here. I actually don't mind it and like it. Some people might want a warmer color balance. You can do that. Go ahead, try it, manually adjust it, do whatever you want to do. There's no right, there's no wrong. We're going to leave this here and just kind of go along. So these are what I call your global adjustments, meaning we're tackling everything in the whole image. So any adjustment I hear affects the whole image. I'm going to, and this is standard that I do this, I'm just going to open up my contrast and open up my shadows a little bit. This is called toning flat. I'm extending my tonal range, meaning from white to black. I'm increasing that because I can always knock it down and give the image pop in the end. But I want to sort of tone in a flatter state, especially in this image, because I'm going to open her up a lot. I don't want to decrease my tonal range. I want to increase my tonal range. And being that we shot in RAW and we have a really nice, long, extended tonal range, that's what we're going to do. So this kind of little opening the shadows, opening the contrast is something that I do a lot. The next thing I'm going to do is go into the adjustment brush. And I don't use a lot of stuff inside of Camera Raw. It's just basically global and selective adjustments. The first thing that we're going to do here is we are going to brighten her face. So to do that, I'm going to hit on the plus. That's going to make everything else here go back to default state, and it's just going to increase the exposure. Now I can go in now, kind of paint or put that in and apply that. And then I can go back in and adjust it after that. So I've got a brush. I don't want my brush to be too small or too big. And we'll just go through here and just try to make a nice basic adjustment. Reduce that brush size for this arm. That's about right. Maybe make it a little bit smaller because there is some feather on this. And we're pretty good there. So we've brightened her up. Now I can come in here and further adjust that. So if I want to increase the highlights on her face, I can do that. If I want to increase the shadows, which I don't, we could do that as well. And that looks pretty good. I won't want to do a whole bunch of stuff here. Now I also want to darken this little area right here. So I'm going to hit new. I'm just going to click on my highlights. I don't want anything else, just my highlights. And we're going to go in here with a really small brush, just sort of darken this down. You won't see it a lot, so that looks pretty good. Just knocking that down a bit. And then we're going to go ahead and hit open image. Now, I did notice when I looked at this image just before I got it, there's like a little blemish here on her face. So we're going to go ahead and take that spot removal tool, the magnifying right where we want to go, and just kind of zoom in, and we'll clean that up for her. And I'm going to go ahead and clean this up. Now, normally I would duplicate my background layer. I might as well do it. And that way I have an original always to kind of go back. There's a couple more spots right here. Clean that up, clean that up. That's good. I'm not really worried about these kind of stray hairs or anything like that in this tutorial. So if there was like a hair here or hair here that I didn't like, I could always go in and clean that up, but we're not going to worry about that too much. So we will zoom back out, and this looks pretty good. We're going to be happy with that. What am I going to do? I need to decide where I want to start in this image and kind of where I want to go. So I have a couple choices. Do I like the tonal value of the sky? I could make this brighter or I could make this darker. It's in a pretty good even state. Or do I want to give this a little bit more drama, which I think I do? And do I want to kind of increase this tonal range a little bit here? So I'm going to hit on curves because basically I only work in curves. And I'm going to increase my contrast of that image a little bit. And what I'm going to do here is go over to my layers. I'm going to turn this off and on so you can see how I'm increasing that contrast. Now, usually in the beginning, you don't want to increase contrast too much because remember I said tone flat. So we want to kind of even things out, and we can add this pop later. When I'm toning, this is kind of what I'm doing right now. You can see it got way too contrasty here when I made this layer, but I'm not actually looking to tone this area. So even though it got contrasty here, I don't care. What I'm interested in is this little sky area here, not even the building, just the sky and just this. So when I'm turning this on and off, that's what I'm looking at, that sky. It's a little bit too much, so I'm going to lower it. And I'm going to hit Command I for inverse. So you notice I made my black mask black. That means it's hiding this adjustment from everywhere. Then I'm going to take my brush, make it a little bit bigger, white, 100%, 100%. And then I can just paint this in. And basically this is now applying this tonal value to just this area. Notice I'm not even going into this area. We'll just kind of paint it in here a little bit. I'll just make my brush smaller, just kind of crudely do that. So now we've done this, and all we've done is increase that contrast in this area just a little bit. That's all we've done. We can always go back there and do it. And you can see it's very hard to see kind of what I did. It's just a little bit of contrast and pop, and you're going to see how that's going to work in a little bit. The next thing that I want to do here on this image is tone my subject's face. Now I'm probably going to tone the face a little bit brighter than I actually am the body. So I want a little more highlight here than here. So I'm going to start off and do a soft version. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my adjustment curve. Remember, as I make this adjustment, I'm just looking at this area. It's going to be affecting everywhere, but I'm just looking here. Yes, could I make a selection and the adjustment would just happen here, but that's just not how I tone. I paint everything in. So we're going to come in here and we're going to make this adjustment. So we can see right here, my histogram in the highlights doesn't even start till here. So I'm going to slide this over to it. Gets to where the histogram or the actual information is inside. Then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start brightening this. Now I'm doing it from the middle. I could come up more towards the highlights if I wanted more highlights or if I wanted to open up more shadows, but I don't want to make my image that flat. So we're going to come and start doing this more towards the highlights. And then I'm going to pull my shadows back down. I don't want to make it too flat and lose too much of that modeling light that we have. So we're just going to make that kind of subtle curve. Now, a cool little trick here is, remember I told you as I brighten this, now you can start to see her hair's getting really red and her face is getting really red. What I'm going to do under layers is change the blending mode on this to luminosity. So what does this do? This, when I change it to luminosity, only affects the brightness values, not the color. So now you can see the color of the hair and that increase in brightness when I went from normal. You can see how bright it is here in normal and how much red we're getting in the face. It's just not affecting that. It's not adding color or color saturation to the image. And this is a great little trick when you have to brighten up something a lot. And to me, this was not a ton, but it's a lot for a photo. I'm actually pretty good with the value here in this dress. I don't think we need to make this very bright. Her skin color, I can tell you right now. So I use the info palette a lot, and it drives me nuts when people don't use it. And we're just going to go over her face. She is very fair skinned. And you can see right now, her tonal value in her face is about 34%. So I'm seeing that right over here. It's telling me the adjustment. That's way, way too dark. Her value, if this was under perfect lighting, because she's so fair skinned, we'll do it on her arm because I think it's a little bit more accurate. We don't get the freckles. It's probably around 15 to 20% would be good on her. This is a little bit dark. We're going to eventually come in here and make this area just a little bit brighter and have a little bit more contrast. So I'm kind of okay with this for now. We'll move that info palette out of the way. So the next thing we're going to do is make another curve, and we're still going to work on the face here. We're going to make another curve, and we are just going to increase that brightness just a little bit, and then bring down that shadow again. And then I've got my info palette off to the side. I'm kind of reading that and looking at it and see how it looks. Actually bright a bit. I don't want to do it so bright that it looks unnatural. So I think we're pretty good there. So I'm going to hit Command I. And what we're going to do here now in both of these, notice I didn't paint a mask or make a mask to brighten just this one area. Right now it's affecting everything in the whole image. I only want to do the mask once, since I basically only want to affect this area right here. So we're going to come in here and we're just going to paint white to apply that. And then I'm going to drag. I'm going to hold the Alt Option key and drag down here. And now you can see these two are only affecting this one little area right here. Now I think I'm going to add a little bit to here. Now what that means is I want to brighten this area. So I can come in here and take my brush, paint that in. So I'm adding to this curve adjustment, meaning I'm not adding to this one, I'm just adding to this one because it's a little bit dark. Command Z that. So we're going to come in here. Again, I'm going to come in. I'm just going to do this crude. A lot of times you'll see me when it's kind of a complicated area, I'll just kind of paint through, because what I can do is flip this to black, then just go on the outside and kind of clean up those areas. I'm just saying, hey, I don't want that to apply there just to this arm. Now, what this did when I painted this arm, it got way too bright. It's like brighter than the skin tone. So that's something that I don't want. So we're going to actually go back in time to where it's darker. What you can do, you don't really need to make a new curve. All you need to do is lower either the opacity or the flow. I'm going to lower the opacity to about 50%, and then I'm going to take white and go back in and brighten this. So I'm kind of brightening this at 50% of that curve adjustment. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm only applying 50% of it. So that way it's not getting too bright as compared to these areas right here. Once again, I can control this to luminosity, and this is going to keep those color values the same. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of fix the color. I'm going to make it a little bit more natural. It's a little reddish magenta in her skin. So what I'm going to do is go to hue saturation. And for those of you who don't know, I do almost all color correction in hue saturation. I almost never use color balance. And what I'm going to do is just shift the color to where I want it. It's a little red, it's a little magenta. So if I go into the red channel and I go this way, you'll notice that I'm making my reds more yellow and then to green. So I'm going to shift this a little bit this way. And basically I'm making my reds a little bit more yellow, closer to a natural color. I can also desaturate just a hair if I wanted. I don't know if I want to in this image. So that looks pretty good. And just like yellows or something else, if I did too much, I can take that out. We're going to get off a little bit. 2 plus 2. That looks pretty good. And we'll leave it like that. I'm trying to do more of a traditional tone and just keep this simple. I could make this more monochromatic. I could make it more warm, whatever we want to do. I'm just showing you some just basic ideas and things that I'm doing here. So notice that we're kind of flat in this image still. I don't think this needs to be opened up or darkened at all. It's not really that important. It's a lot out of focus. There's not a lot of detail. It's more of just a line. So I don't think we need to open it. I have enough detail here. This whole image is on the dark side. It's not super bright. I can show you how we can kind of fix that and look at it. I'm going to bring my info palette back over and I'm going to go over these little white things. Notice we're at 20%. That's really dark for those. That's good. Because remember, I don't want that to be showing up so much. So we'll just kind of move this back off. So if you remembered in the beginning, I said we are toning a little bit on the flat side. So now we're going to add that pop. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to make a curves adjustment layer. We're going to add a little bit of highlight and a little bit of contrast. Now I want to watch all these areas so it doesn't get too blocked up. So you don't want to get too contrasty where it doesn't look good. We just want to add that little kind of pop to our image. And there's other ways you can add more pop by using dynamic contrast and stuff like that. But just basically we're going to be pretty good here. And then I'm going to just open up those shadows just a little bit. You'll see me a lot of times when I add contrast that I'll come back and I'll just open my shadows up a little bit. Because when you add the contrast, it can sometimes make your dark areas a little bit too dark. If I was to have a straight curve, it would be here. I'm just kind of opening back up the shadows just a little bit. So I'm getting that contrast, but I don't want to get my dark areas too dark. And that looks pretty good. We'll come down up here and turn this on and off so you can see how to add that pop to that image. It's just really defining those lines and giving it some contrast. Looks a whole lot better. This image is on the darker side and I'm good with that. I could really come in here and brighten this up a whole lot if I wanted. This being that bright would be just as good as the other, but I think I actually like this being a little bit on the darker side. The only issue I really see in this image is the fingers are a little bit dark. It looks kind of a little bit odd. I could come in here and brighten these up, but I'm not going to spend the time in this tutorial. If you want to come in here and brighten these fingers up a little bit, you can. I think this image also is going to look good in black and white. So what I'm going to do is quickly make a black and white adjustment. And one of the issues when you switch something to black and white, when you tone something in color, it does not translate well into black and white. What happens a lot of times is subjects or people get way too flat. You have to open them up a whole lot. So when you are toning, just beware. A perfectly toned color image is not a perfectly toned black and white image. You are usually going to have to go into certain areas and open them up a little bit more. Hopefully that's been helpful. You learned a little bit about toning an image today. If you have Any comments or questions, you can leave those below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe.